Welcome, our dear viewers, to a new episode of our program Africa Today. And indeed, Ihab Galal was on Tuesday named as the new coach of Egypt, replacing Carlos Queiroz, who left the role this week. The 54-year-old is currently in charge of the Pyramids FC in the Egyptian Premier League, who is joined at the start of the season and has led them to the quarterfinals of the African Confederation Cup. More details about this in the following story.
The EFA has also sacked the association's technical manager, Nello Vengado. Galal, who's taking charge of the national team for the first time, has risen to one of the best coaches in recent years after his notable performances with the Makassar from 2014 until 2017 and his coaching of Cairo Giant Zamalek. The 54-year-old coach joined Pyramids FC in the beginning of the current season, achieving good results with the club. Added the third in the domestic league standings and reached the knockout stage of the African Confederation Cup. Galal was shortlisted for the national team coach back in 2019, but Hossein El Badri was appointed at that time instead. The next mission for the national team will be the 2023 Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers, which will take place between 30th of May and 14th of June 2022, which means Galal's first mission will be in less than 2 months.
Minister of Finance Mohamed Maid called on his African counterparts to adopt a unified African vision on issues of financing and climate change by holding a number of joint preparatory meetings in the coming period in preparation for Egypt's hosting of the UN Conference of Parties on Climate Change, COP27.
Maid called on his African counterparts to adopt a unified African vision on issues of financing and climate change by holding a number of joint preparatory meetings in the coming period in preparation of Egypt's hosting of the UN Conference of the Parties on Climate Change, COP27. During his meeting with Vera Sonne, Under Secretary General of the UN and Executive Secretary of the UN Economic Commission for the Africa, Maid affirmed his keenness to enhance cooperation between the two sides in a way that helps in the successful hosting of the COP27 in November. A number of initiatives were discussed to be presented at the conference to achieve the aspirations of the African countries in the field of providing the necessary funding sources for the phenomenon of the climate change. The finance minister also reviewed the negative effects of the coronavirus pandemic and the Russian-Ukrainian conflict on African economies. For his part, Tani invited Maid to participate in the meetings of the African finance ministers in Dakar next May as a step towards preparing for the meetings that Egypt will host during the coming period to unify the visions of the African countries on financing and climate change issues. Furthermore, the two sides discussed the project submitted by the Economic Commission for Africa to establish a liquidity and sustainability facility which would contribute to alleviating the burdens of African countries borrowing from international financial markets.
To shed more light on the issue, we are very much delighted to be joined over the phone by Dr. Jaylan Sharaf, former Dean of the Faculty of Mass Communication, Swiss University. Dr. Sharaf, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you and your own audience.
Thank you very much for being our guest for today, Dr. Jaylan. Actually, Minister of Finance Mohamed Maid called on his African counterparts to adopt a unified African vision on issues of financing and climate change. Do you believe that the African nations have a unified vision when it comes to the issue of climate change, Dr. Jaylan?
As we know that Egypt will host the COP27, which is the Conference of Partners, in November, which is Sharm el-Sheikh, and Egypt will be the voice of Africa. That's why we are because we are the key, the heart of Africa, and we are the key for all the investors to invest in Egypt and all Africa. Also, as you know, that the Minister of Finance, Mr. Mohamed Maid, already issued since 2019 the Green Bond, which will give the opportunity to all investors to invest in the green projects. And this is with, as I mentioned, that this started since 2018, and this is our progress. There are progress in this, and also, as you know, we have major projects in Egypt regarding the green production that we are going to have projects in green energy. It's, for example, natural gas instead of using petrol in cars. Also, we are going to use the wind in order to have renewable energy in different ways, in order to that we can generate energy in order to be used in factories, in plants, and so on. And so on. So we have great projects like Zandan in Aswan, which will also mean that we are reducing green energy by 45%, for example, something like that. So we are proceeding in this, and we are investing in green projects also in the economic zone. As we also planning to have no carbon, to have zero carbon in this area.
Dr. Jaylan, speaking about Egypt, what are the effects of the climate change on the coastal region in the country? And is it noticeable that the climate change has a hand in changing the patterns of the weather or its intensity?
As you see now, we have different degrees in different weather. As you see, that last week it was too hot, and although we are in spring, and this is not natural. Now we are returning back to the weather as if we are in winter. We are too cold in the early morning, and at night only we have it's late at the daytime. So that means that we have the climate change changing the temperature, also changing the temperature of water, and this is also very dangerous for the sea, because this means that the fish will be vanished if we do not start to plan for taking procedures to report these areas by making block plans by saving this area, also by planting trees like mangroves, which let the waves or the sea not to manage these people.
Yes. Dr. Egypt actually is ramping up efforts for the upcoming COP27 summit slated to be held in November in the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh. The summit is to witness a constructive dialogue with the aim of producing ambitious results and developing initiatives that build on the outcome of the last year Glasgow summit. What's your take on that, Dr. Jaylan?
Yes, as you know that we are going to start from the end. That means we are going to complete the action Glasgow regarding investment in how against the climate change, by the people at the individual council, adapting this change. There are initiatives of many initiatives with the government and by the civil society in order to build our country. Well, how to adapt to the life in a way of how to
Yes, Dr. Jaylan Sharaf, former Dean of the Faculty of Mass Communication, Swiss University. Many thanks for your precious input. Always a pleasure to have you with us. And before we wrap up our episode, let's have a look at this feature story from the African continent. And today's story comes from the Ugandan territories about the stigma of vertigo patients. More details in the following story.
locked in this small room, which he has turned into an art studio on the outskirts of the capital, Kampala. He uses a charcoal-based paint to create extraordinary portraits, many featuring people with the skin condition vitiligo. Vitiligo is an autoimmune disorder which is clinically characterized by the development of the white patches, which are caused by a lack of working melanocytes. These are cells which produce the melanin in the skin. The artist learned about the disease while studying for his art degree. The first-class degree is now being used to raise awareness about the vitiligo and to educate people. He's since learned about how the stigma of having vitiligo forces many people to avoid the social situations, staying in isolation at home and sinking into depression. He says some superstitious people in Uganda believe that the disease is a bad omen.
Well, with this future story, our dear viewers, we come to the end of this edition of Africa Today. I'm Mahissi Rabia. Many thanks for watching.